So far, there's been 2 intense races with 2 intense finishes, but 1 dominant driver. Shepard has continued the performances we've seen throughout his entire time in all of Bootleg Racing League competition, and continues to show that dominance at tracks such as the ones we'll see tonight. It's a track where he's performed well in the past, but it's also one where some of his fellow competitors like James Lowe are expect to be right on his tailpipe throughout the entire night. The question's going to be, who will take home the checker flag? We're about to find out here on the Global SimRacing Channel. So we say good evening, everyone, and welcome to the virtual Five Flags Speedway for Race 3 of the 2021 Season 1 campaign for the Bootleg Racing League's Grand National Series. I'm Justin Prince. Alongside the booth tonight is DJ Clark. Behind the scenes is our director, Sean Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beer. There's a lot to say when it comes to Five Flags Speedway. Let's take a look at our Gsrc track guide to learn more about the home of the Snowball Derby.
Welcome to Five Flags. This half-mile paved oval opened in 1953. Five Flags Speedway takes its name from its proximity to Pensacola, Florida. Pensacola, Florida is known as the City of Five Flags, which references the fact that it is 5 governments that have ruled the city. Five Flags is one of the fastest short tracks in America, thanks in part to its 15 degrees of banking and the wide turns that give the track a nearly circular configuration. You never have a chance to rest at Five Flags with the speeds that you carry and the close quarters that you always find yourself in. Five Flags is also very bumpy. Managing the bumps is one of the keys to victory here. Turn 1 is tricky. You carry a lot of momentum off of turn 4, and you have to try to roll the car down and get down into the corner. And the fastest way around the track is about 4 inches away from that pit wall. Things happen fast at Five Flags, with most of the lap times averaging around the 16-second mark. Fast track, fast cars, amazing action. All of these are what Five Flags is known for, and just the type of racing that you are going to see today. So stay tuned, buckle in, and enjoy the race.
That's a look at our Gsrc track guide for Five Flags Speedway. Let's bring my broadcast partner and DJ Clark. And DJ, what are your expectations for these cars here tonight, as this has been a series staple for the past few seasons?
Well, Justin, whereas last week at the Bull Ring, we pretty much saw single groove racing all the way around, the high banking here at Five Flags, I think, is actually going to present some double file racing by chance. It's going to have a second groove that definitely comes in over the course of the race. It's going to be a little bit difficult to run up there, but watch for some guys to carry some momentum up on the high side and maybe keep a little better action going all the way throughout. The other thing about running that high side in these ARCA Impalas is going to be you're going to save the tires ever so slightly, and that is going to be very, very key. We've seen guys struggle time in and time out with tire wear over the course of the race. So watch for some varying strategy in terms of when to run that high line and when to go down low. But all in all, Justin, these ARCAs are going to be great to watch here around this staple speedway of the Grand National Series.
Thank you very much, DJ. As these drivers make their way around the racetrack and prepare for tonight, let's take a look at our driver standings. Take a look at what you may have been missing for the championship fight so far. We're J.R. Shepard has won both the races so far. J.R. Shepard fashion. 80 points scored by him as a result, max points so far over Kenny Kibbe, who's 3 points back. James Lowe, 4 points. Justin Morton also is in 5 points behind. Then it gets a little bit money from that point on with some of the consistency for some of the other drivers, where the top 4 have been running 1 through 4 much of the season. Ruben Altes has been able to bump his way into the top 5, 10 points behind J.R. Shepard and the early going of this season. Still early on in the campaign, remember, no drops for these competitors in this respective series as per last season's rules and regulations. But let's take a look at the race details for tonight's action here from Five Flags. DJ.
Well, we are working on the third of 11 rounds in the BRL Grand National Series. It is a 100-lap race here today and no tire changes. That tire wear always going to be significant, like I talked about when talking about the track. If you do get a little bit of damage over the course of this race, although these cars are like tanks, sometimes it gets a little bit too much to handle, you do get one faster pair. And now this is one of the things that makes the Grand National Series so special, is that we don't have qualifying. Instead, everybody lines up in the positions that they finished from the previous race, with the exception of the top 8. Those 8 will be inverted, and that is how we will determine the starting order.
Be interesting how the drivers fare for tonight's action. Is at the moment, James Lowe is leading the practice session. The only driver to reach into the 16.8 at the moment. Gsrc Shepard is second closest with a 16.9, which is a flat. But Jason Menda, Mike Holloway, Mark Herzog, your top 5 on the board. Justin Morton in 6th position. Keep in mind tonight's track conditions here for this racetrack. Sees an in-sim time of about 6 p.m. at the moment. 87 degrees Fahrenheit. The track is very toasty for this time of the year on iRacing Day, May 15, 2021. 80 degrees is the air temp at the moment, DJ.
It is, and you're right, it's unseasonably toasty for this time, but in terms of that track temp at 87 degrees, that is right what we like to call the Goldilocks zone, where it's not going to be too cool for these guys, and only a corner or two is going to all it needs to get these tires up to temperature. So that 87 is going to be very, very helpful for everybody, and it's not going to wear off those tires. You're not going to be slipping and sliding your way all around this track, so very, very good tire temperature to promote some good racing.
Now, keep in mind, one thing to consider is temperatures got a little bit too hot for one driver in the last race at the Bullring at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Chris Davis will be removed from both Invitational Series for the next 2 seasons due to 3 different penalties he had ensued and added up into for the last race that involved over-aggressive racing, involving an incident with an air car, over-aggressive racing with a failure to stop after an incident, then over-aggressive racing where he forced an air car onto the apron, causing a wreck. You have to take things seriously when it causes incidents, even accidentally, and in that case, the series has taken a very firm stance against Chris Davis.
And good for this series, Justin. You know, this is one of those series where, well, to put it in the common term, rubbing is racing, and a little bit of bumping, a little bit of trading pain is to be expected. But when you start really putting the races of those around you at stake, the series is not going to think twice before giving you a nice little vacation. That's exactly what happened to Chris Davis. Also important to note, I think, that Tim Szymanowski on similar notions was a little bit of disrespectful on communications, calling out another driver over the open comms. That is not allowed in this series. They like to keep everything very good, very professional around here, very nice to everybody, which makes for a fantastic mentality up and down the paddock, and Tim has been given a warning for that infraction.
Yes, indeed. Following along board with some of these drivers throughout practice tonight, and one of the main consistent marks is it's a very bumpy track, but it's also one where the majority of the contenders expected to run towards the bottom of the racetrack. If you are forced up to the middle line, it could be more difficult until the track rubbers in.
Yeah, it's certainly going to take a couple of laps, but we did hear last week at the end of the race at the Bull Ring just how bullish some of the drivers were about that second lane opening up. I anticipate around lap 30 to 50 is when we're really going to see that high lane start to open, with more and more drivers trying to get on it. Now, the other thing about this is the high banking really allows for a lot more crossover maneuvers for these drivers, starting in super, super high in the opening part of the turn, diving down low to really get a nice tight apex and try to get up under your competitor going into the next corner.
You see, by the way, on the practice charts that now 5 drivers have reached the 16-second bracket. Lowe, Shepard, Jason Menda, Joe Sagawa, Mike Holloway are those drivers. Who do you feel this race tonight is going to favor as we take a look at the car in 6th spot on the board? Mark Herzog, the first driver out in the 17-second bracket.
Well, it may be a little cheesy here, Justin, but looking at that timing screen, I have to say I think James Lowe's luck is due to make a change. He's been very, very unlucky the first couple of rounds during the course of the season, but he has always been very, very quick. Lowe at the top of the charts right now, albeit only 400ths up on his closest competitor, Gsrc Shepard, but I think Lowe's going to stand a really, really good opportunity to maybe make up some points and steal a win away from Gsrc Shepard, deny him the hat trick to open the season.
Yeah, but here's one of the key differences here. For one, you see some of the handling differentials for drivers like Kurtzong having to save the car around with the hotter temperatures. But for two, the amount of time you put in on a set of tires could be very critical to make sure you know how the car is going to react if you don't have that experience, DJ.
Oh, most certainly, and that's one of the things that J.R. Shepherd is the absolute best at, is knowing where the life of the tire is, how to preserve it, and how to drive right on the edge of that tire life the entire time. He is an absolute master, and I would not be surprised if we see something similar to what we've seen the past couple of weeks from J.R., where he just sort of hangs back a little bit at the beginning, maybe lets a quarter of the race go on by before really starting to take the move. Put some pressure on the opponents in front of him, let them wear out their tires, and then JR saving tires make the move at the end.
Interesting mark, by the way, when it comes to J.R. Shepherd. His average laps over the past 20 since the start of the session is a 17:40. He is only one of two drivers, DJ, who have reached that mark so far in the session of 20 consistent laps in a row, plus Justin Morton 17:8 on that average at the moment. That's a chance to see some other drivers potentially up towards the front. Jason Mendo usually performs well at this track. Mike Holloway performs decently at this track. Austin Belke has performed decently at this track in the past. Don't forget about Kenny Kibbe, who's still trying to bump himself up the board and try and get himself some more experience at this racetrack.
Yeah, Kenny's currently down in 13th right now. A little bit of an uncharacteristically low position for Kenny, but watch for him to come up. Austin Belke is another one, though, that I'm really going to be keeping my eye on. We talked about him last week, just how much he has improved both in this and the Dirt Series that these guys run on Friday nights. Austin has been putting in some very, very consistent drives recently and has just kind of fallen to some bad luck. So I think that number 24 is one to watch, is potentially one to work his way up through the field and maybe get a good top 5, top 10 position here tonight.
It's that car you actually seen spun on the bottom of the racetrack after he hit some of the bumps in Turn 3's apron. And that's going to be critical tonight. You can see, again, how low all these cars are going to be. We talked about the difference in the grooves, but as well, the bumps themselves are going to be so critical to make sure you avoid, especially in 3 and 4, where there isn't a line like there is in 1 and 2, and it's where you smack that tire or even the splitter against that bottom of the racetrack, your car could go bye-bye.
Oh, very, very much so. As we watch the 99 of James Lowe catch the car and bring it down onto that apron, it's one of the things that you always have to contend with when you are dealing with a high-banked circuit like this. It's that transition from the apron to the actual banking. If you get too far onto that, it can really, really throw off the car. But if you've got some game, if you really have good understanding of how the car works and how it likes to perform, you can use a little bit of that to your advantage and get the car to over-rotate ever so slightly and get you around the corner a little bit faster.
Yes, indeed. 2 minutes to go until drivers hit the starting grid for tonight's action here. Currently 17 drivers are at the facility, currently 16 of turn times. Chris Wolfson at the bottom of the board, for reference sake, along with Kurt Smith, who's going back to Mark Martin's later years. Number 6 cars tonight. Who else are you keeping an eye on for this type of race tonight?
Well, I think somebody else that I want to keep an eye on is going to be Ruben Altis. Ruben had a good run out last week. He may have a little bit of success here today. And frankly, one that I'm really kind of bullish to watch here, Lowell Jewell, series organizer, currently in P5. Yeah, it's a very, very good time from him. He's been consistently in about the 17.3s or so over the course of this. So Lowell's going to be starting back in the field as there you see Justin Morton putting in a top time to pump himself up to the 3rd place position. But Lowell hopefully will be able to rise up through the field here, and he's going to be one to keep an eye on.
Is it concerning that many of the drivers, in some cases, haven't turned an average of, say, 20 laps in a row on a set of tires, or majority at the least have focused mainly on shorter runs? Is that something you panic about if you see that in practice and see some of the drivers spinning around?
Yeah, if I'm behind the wheel, I'm definitely making a mental note of drivers that I haven't seen on the track all that often. They're not going to know how the car's going to handle over the course of a long run. And as we keep saying, with no tire changes in this series, it is going to make it very, very difficult as the course of the race goes along. This high banking is going to tear up the tires a little bit, even though the track temperature is not going to be as brutal as it could be. So if you're not running a lot of laps here today, I'm going to be watching you and make a few mistakes down the road.
On that count, Justin Morton turned the most laps in this practice in preparation for tonight with 54. Joe Segala 48, James Lowe 44, Menda 41, 38 for Bruce Pearson, 37 for Shepard, Liston 36, 35 for Kurt Smith and Ruben Ortiz. Rounding out the top 10 in that mark, Austin Felke 33 laps. Chris Wolfson, the lowest total, along with Tim Chanelski with 7 in 2 respectively. But it's time to look at how the drivers will line up on the starting grid for their number slots tonight. Or after what was an intense practice session, it will be J.R. Shepard who will be leading them to the green flag. James Lowe, Kenny Kibbe, Justin Morton, Jason Menda, Mark Herzog, Joe Segala, Tim Janowski, your top 8 with Ruben Ortiz in 9th. Bruce Pearson starts in the 10th position.
Lining up in 11th will be Mike Holloway, followed by Todd Liston, Austin Belke, and Mike Allen going to be lining up behind him in 13th and 14th. Chris Wilson and Kurt Smith will be lining up 15th and 16th. And series organizer Lil Jewel, who was quick during practice, he's lining up in last place of 17th.
That's Bucky, your starting grid, and your keys to victory for tonight, now knowing that some of the fast drivers will have some clean space from the get-go.
Well, I think that's going to change the game a little bit here. J.R. Shepard may want to try to get out front and press his advantage ever so slightly, and Kenny Kibbe's going to be very happy with that as well. I would watch for a good battle developing between Kibbe and Lowe, as Kibbe will have that starting preferred line down on the inside.
You talked about some of your favorites. Who else on top of things have we not talked about too much, who you also feel this track could lend their talents towards?
Well, Justin, I think Justin Morton is another one to keep an eye on. He's had a pretty decent run here lately, and he may be one to watch. Joe Segala lining up 7th may be good as well. So really anybody up and down this field could be very, very interesting to watch, just depending on how this race plays itself out here today.
Again, these drivers now going for one additional pace lap before the green flag will fly for tonight's action. 100 laps on the docket. Track conditions have actually seen the track cool down a little bit as a result of that big cloud we've seen right before the start of tonight's action to 84 degrees Fahrenheit. And time is currently at the moment 6:22 p.m. on iRacing Day, May 15th, 2021. But it's J.R. Shepard who's had a dominant start to BRL competition so far this season. See if he can try and do it again in a different Path Motorsports machine. iRacing pace car is off. Green flags out. We're underway from 5 flags.
Very good start there from Lowe out on the outside. Kenny Kibbe starting to challenge him, but James Lowe able to keep that speed up along the outside and slots himself up into second, really making that high lane work and starting to challenge a little bit on J.R. Shepard.
And there were a lot of practice laps we talked about, and when you add up the total, that could have built up some of the rubber. That's going to be very critical here. Kenny Kibbe already to 3rd position, shuffling in the mid-pack already, where several drivers still struggling to get to the bottom, past about 8th or 9th position.
Yeah, and sometimes those drivers, if you just don't feel good in that high groove, you will absolutely get caught out. As there you see James Lowe and then Ruben Ortiz setting the fastest lap of the race with a 17.111. And now up front, these leaders, J.R. Shepard and James Lowe, starting to pull away ever so slightly from Kenny Kibbe in 3rd.
Shepard sets the fastest lap so far in the early going with a 16.988 with the clean air. You can see from the back end, Lowe, a little bit of a different line, a little bit higher up compared to Shepard. Continues to try and paint the very edge of where there's that difference on the apron and the banking for the racetrack, as well as some of the bumps, as Lowe counters back with his own fastest lap.
Well, and James Lowe there doing exactly what I talked about early on, Justin, taking a little bit of a wider, higher entry into the corner to be able to go lower down the straightaway. Goes for a little bit of a move there on J.R. Shepard, but just a hair of wheel spin and oversteer off of turn 4 is going to thwart that a little bit. Just to note, Justin Morton is doing the exact same thing behind him with Kenny Kibbe running that high line. This is turning into a really good battle. 4P3, Kibbe, Morton, Menda, and Herzog all running line of stern.
Bit of trouble down the back straightaway. Kurt Smith has gone around no caution flag as we see Morton try and find his way around this 14 machine. But remember, the difficult part for Morton's past couple seasons has been keeping the right rear tire underneath him, and he is looking very loose early.
Yeah, that car is being very, very squirrely on him. You see, part of the reason he's taking that wide line into the corner is frankly because he's just trying to minimize any snap oversteer that he gets. The car very, very loose here. He is able to keep it behind Kenny Kibbe, but as this race goes along, Justin, I gotta think he's gonna be struggling more and more.
Take a look at the wheel movements right on corner exit. You see those little kickouts there, as well as how much he is bouncing around on that wheel. That ends up really heating up the tires, scrubbing the tires. The more you have to try and correct it more towards the right ends up costing you. There's a reason that drivers will tell you, especially the best of the short track racers will tell you, you need to exit the corner straight in a lot of these tracks to be able to save the tires.
Exactly. If you're seesawing at the wheel like we see Justin Morton doing there, that's just going to take away tire life time and time again from you. Really, really not doing a good job. But you see how planted it looks like Kenny Kibbe's car is in front of him. He's able to dive it down all the way to that apron, down to that white line, and really, really make it work. Taking a little bit of a wider exit there off the corner than I would expect. But watch him here through one. Able to really get down onto that line. Little bit of a slide, though, from Kibbe.
That's all allowed the leaders to pull away by now, a second plus. Keep in mind that seventh on back has already lost 3 seconds to the race leaders. That's where at the moment Ruben Altis has just taken away seventh position along with Holloway. It's in 1 and 2 at the moment, as right now Shepard is in turn 3 entry. That's how big the gap's grown amongst these cars.
Yeah, it looks like Kenny Kibbe's a little bit of the cork in the bottle here, preventing Justin Morton from being really able to power on by him. Morton always close, within a couple of thousandths of a second, but these two up front running very, very well. There you can see Kibbe just absolutely doing a good job defending, but ooh, a little bit of a wider line on entry there. Almost gave Morton a shot, but there you see that rear tire starting to disapprove a little bit. Justin kicking out on Justin Morton.
So far, 15 laps in, coming to the start of lap 16 this time by Mark Herzog. Now trying to use a bit of the higher line, and all the cars, in fact, have now rubbered in that second line as Menda hits the wall. Bit of a slide as he holds on. Mark Herzog forced to check up hard, though, and loses a second.
That's really, really gonna hurt Jason Menda there and everybody involved. Very, very tough situation. Doesn't look like the car is too badly damaged and everybody will be able to continue on, but that's certainly going to throw off his confidence.
See a tiny bit of a scrape potentially on the left rear from that big checkup. That's about it. But the drivers up front, Lowe and Shepard, still bumper to bumper. The pressure still being applied by the 99 to try and force Shepard to burn up his equipment.
And that is exactly what James Lowe is hoping to do, but Lowe's got to be careful not to do the exact same thing that is happening to Shepard. Doesn't want to burn up his tires either. And there you see the two of them off the line, relatively planted there, so no real concerns of it. I think James Lowe just waiting and watching here in that second place popcorn position.
That's one of the main keys, right? Not burning up your stuff too early. And remember, Lowe, one of his best tracks, DJ, is here.
It certainly is. James Lowe really, really loves this track. It's almost like a mini cup circuit with the way the banking works. A little bit of almost of a circle in the way that you run it. And James Lowe does not look here like he is pushing, Justin. He is just watching and waiting for J.R. Shepard. But he's going to have to start putting the pedal to the metal as this race continues on, as J.R. Shepard, very, very known for being consistent and almost never making a mistake.
At the moment, the average past 10 laps near identical, within 2 1,000ths of a second. Lowe now starts to try and move a little bit lower on corner exit, all while Kibbe is starting to grow a gap on Morton, growing a gap on Jason Menda and Mark Herzog. That's after Herzog lost a second, or rather a tenth, while Menda lost 2/10 last time by.
Yeah, they really clearly seem to be struggling, and it's kind of the same story that was happening behind them. As we jump back here, that's the 07 of Shanoski, Altis, and Mike Holloway in front of them. This is the battle for 7th. These cars are really starting to develop into little 2 or 3 car pods over the course of the track. Everything really starting to separate out here as we work lap 24.
Yeah, they've broken away from where Bruce Pearson, Austin Belke, and Joe Sagawa are at the moment. Belke already +3 for reference, +4 for Holloway. Counts to where he started along with Ruben Alti. Says there's that scrap right there. Sagawa trying to gain some of his spots back right behind him as well.
There you see a good move for Sagawa down the inside. Looks like he is able to get that done on the 22 of Bruce Pearson to move Joe Sagawa back up to 11th. He was one of those drivers, Justin, that got caught out and running the high side early on and just lost position after position, not really able to get down to his preferred low-line groove.
They now calm their way back down up towards the front once again. The top two still within 0.2 of a second. All the way through the action so far. Green flag all the way so far. Shepard is starting to grow the gap a little bit. The past couple, he has started to get a little bit faster by a couple 100ths.
Yeah, Justin, we're over a quarter way done with the race here, and I think J.R. Shepard wants to start to push James Lowe behind him, see if he can force Lowe into a mistake instead of the other way around. You see that gap on the straightaways up to about a car length and a half, so Shepard really just starting to see what Lowe has got here tonight. He's running the same line he has been the entire time, diving in a little bit later on an apex line, just pushing the car as easy as he can go, but I think he's starting to break ever so later and just pushing, trying to see what he can muster out.
I have to say, all the drivers across the racetrack, including the drivers in the mid-pack and in the back of the field, driving much more stable than they were in practice now that they know the limitations of the car and have that data together to know what these cars are going to do. And it also helps too that we mentioned the cooler track conditions to start off, that they were that mark. They are hotter, by the way, now because of the rubber buildup on the racetrack to 88 degrees again.
Yeah, that's going to just be a little bit of a change for him, but nothing too crazy. One of the big things to keep in mind, though, is some of the shadows that we're seeing over the course of the track, specifically in turn 3. As we stay on board with the leaders, you'll be able to see them as they cross back into it. There you can see some of those shadows on the exit of turn 2, but as they dive into turn 3, there you can see it. Those shadows are going to change the track temperature ever so slightly. It's going to cool it down right there, and it will change the grip profile, so something these drivers are going to have to keep in mind.
Also, too, with the shade, some of the lighting overall, with how dark it can get there once the light's gonna go underneath that part of the racetrack. One of the fans watching along even saying that at night, it's like driving into a dark closet. That's how dark it can get for some drivers there.
It very much is, Justin. You know, I love driving Myrtle Beach during the day. It's a very lovely track. It's a lot of fun. You get to use the banking, play with that apron line, see what you can do with it. But the night lighting here, not great.
Yes, indeed. Five Lakes Speedway, a beautiful racetrack overall, though you have to say, with the history and some of the names built up at this racetrack. As these leaders continue to scrap, let's turn it to 11 and listen into some of the sights and sounds here at Five Flags. Beautiful sight and sounds around Five Flags Speedway here as the top two stay within 0.3 of one another. But as you can see, they have reached some traffic, and that could be interesting to see how that plays out. Of note, Todd Liston's also pulled off the racetrack in 87. You see at the bottom of the racetrack as Lowe hits the top wall with the right rear.
That's the first real mistake we've seen from James Lowe here today, and you can see just what it is costing him. He is dropping back substantially to J.R. Shepard. Shepard being able to pull ahead a nice little gap.
Some of the mistakes starting to build up to the point where Kenny Kibbe is now the quickest car on the racetrack. The thing is, Kibbe is still 1.5 seconds back to the race leader.
Yeah, Kibby's really going to have his work cut out for him here if he wants to do it. But Justin, as you mentioned, they are only about a second behind 15th place driver Mike Smith, and Mike Allen, Kurt Smith just ahead of them. So this is where that traffic is going to come into play. This is where you've got to really trust these drivers ahead of you to get out of the way for the leaders and hope we don't have anything too crazy riding on board of the back of that lap car of Mike Allen right now.
He moves all the way up out of the groove and then some. That's going to hurt James Lowe, though, because that's going to affect his corner exit. And Lowe is starting to lose the rear end of his car. Nearly spun it off down the back straightaway on corner exit. His car starting to dance around a ton, especially entering turn 3 as well.
It very much is. I think J.R. Shepherd did exactly what he wanted to do to James Lowe, of just making him overwork those tires ever so slightly, burn up a little bit more rubber than J.R. Shepherd was able to do. This gap between the top 3 really spacing out quite evenly now. Shepherd ahead of Lowe, ahead of Kibby. They're all about equal distance away from each other, as now Shepherd starts to line up Kurt Smith ahead of him.
Right now that these drivers trying to continue to hit their same marks right now towards that middle line for the entry, down towards the very bottom to diamond it off on the exit. Lowe continuing to struggle to hit that same line. Shepherd has hit every single lap. There's Kibby now. He's able to paint it right against the white line and keep it nice and stable, as we talked about before in that battle with Justin Morton a while back.
Yeah, Kenny's really got a good control of the car. You can see him there, only a slight bit of counter steer coming off of the corner, but that steering wheel relatively straight. As there you see James Lowe really struggling around that corner, not able to diamond it off or take anything good. Lowe just drifting up the track, try as he might. Those tires, I think, Justin, really starting to go off with the 99.
Especially towards halfway, that's not the best of signs when you have the tires already going off with still an hour 50 laps to go into the action. E6, meanwhile, is also starting to build up into a bit of a train. That's where Mark Herzog is now falling into the grass with Mike Holloway, Tim Janowski, Austin Belke, and company.
Yeah, that's really starting to develop up into a nice little battle there. You can see on your screen everyone really starting to close in behind the 57 of Herzog. Holloway closing in very quickly in particular.
Change for second spot. Kenny Kibby has been let go by James Lowe. That was in 3 and 4 this past time by. Lowe just gave him the space and then some for Kibby to just drive right on by after he reeled him in, remember, from up to a second plus back.
And there you see out the back of James Lowe's car just how much that car is dancing across the track. Kenny Kibby really applying pressure, puts it down on the inside. And I talked about it earlier, Justin, those outside tires for James Lowe just going away and not leaving anything to be able to get down that car, drifting up the track no matter what he can do to help it. Kenny Kibby now up into second, setting his sights on J.R. Shepherd.
Mike Holloway now with some problems. He was in that train we were talking about moments ago. Let's take a look at what just happened to him. His right side of the car significantly damaged. Let's take a look why.
So we ride on board with Mike Holloway here, working his way through turns 1 and 2 right now, down to that low line, keeping everything nice and easy. Ooh, big scrape on the wall and just not able to get up. He keeps dancing with it and sliding along, and as he goes, there you see that is the number 24 of Austin Belke, as well as Tim Shanowski able to get by him.
So that drives Mike Holloway out of the inversion spots. He is now 9th spot. Kenny Kibby, meanwhile, he's still the fastest car on the racetrack, and with some of this traffic, he's gaining. Now half a second he's picked up in the past 25 laps Kibby has.
He has, but he hasn't encountered any lap traffic in particular. But J.R. Shepherd right now starting to work on Chris Wolfson and seeing what he can do there, as Wolfson getting ready to go a lap down. But Kenny Kibby just absolutely reeling in Shepherd. He's got that gap now down to just under a second.
Keep in mind that Shepherd had to defend a lot to DJ on James Lowe. Do you think that may have factored in now with this, where Kibby has essentially just been able to run his own marks and just has been running in third mostly on his own, other than having to hold off Morning for 10-15 laps?
It very well well could, Justin, but now as we watch both of them working their way around, Kenny Kibbe starting to come up behind Wolfson himself, this may be a situation where now Kibbe is pedaling a little bit harder and Shepard in semi-clean air able to back off a little bit and save the tires in the halfway point of this race. And so it's all going to be a give and take. The only time that tire conservation is really going to start to matter and who did what when is in those last 10 laps. As Kibbe, very late move on the inside of Wolfson, forced to run a high line.
Loses a ton of time, in fact, 2/10 to the back end of J.R. Shepard's race car with that higher line. Team flat for Kenny Kibbe. Shepard turning 17.9s. That's 1 second of fall off on these tires, by the way, for your lead cars at the moment.
Jumping back here to this battle for P6, this is Mark Herzog. Tim Szymanski starting to come up behind him, and Austin Belke really starting to pressure the number 7. Now this is the battle for those inversion spots. Normally P8 starting off in first in the next race. So everybody seeing what they can do here, trying to find something for anybody. But ooh, wow, Austin Belke very good onto the brakes into 3.
Now really picked up some time of the 07 machine. He is a +5 on the night so far. Herzog has been dropping back. His highest position has been where he's been running 6th, but the back end of Jason Mendo. Furthest he's been able to reach so far is Belke. Starting to get held up a little bit for some positions here. Keep in mind, as all of this scraps along, we talk about then those inversion spots. The next race at South Boston, where track position can also be very valuable, as Herzog knew he loses the bottom.
Tim Szymanski, it's the second time we've seen him make that look down the inside. So he's clearly got a quick car. The one that, as you said, this is clearly disadvantaging, though, is Austin Belke. Belke just not able to get around either of them. Is look how much more speed there Szymanski has off of the corner. But Mark Herzog doing a very good job of driving defensive and keeping Szymanski behind him.
Eventually, though, you have to think something's going to have to give, especially with how rough the line on exit Herzog has had down the back straightaway. On corner exit, again, pushes up a little bit tight. The 07 not able to take advantage again.
I think if I'm Szymanski at this point, I'm just going to want to be very, very careful. There you can see just how much more control he has off the line, letting that car run wide. Szymanski now taking a wide line, trying to cut down. That's going to hold up Austin Belke ever so slightly, but it may work to his advantage. He gets a pretty good run off of the corner. Still not enough to make it work. Oh, you can see this has got to be so frustrating for that number 24.
Now, especially with him and his pace, with Mike Holloway now being reeled back into this fight, as well as a result of all these checkups. 18-1's the current pace for these respective drivers, as there's Szymanski finally underneath Herzog. Herzog, though, able to squeeze himself down. The 07, though, still shows the nose. Back on the defense goes Mark Herzog, still for that spot. Another 2/10 loss to Jason Menda for this whole group as a result.
Looked like Szymanski on that last lap just got a little bit squirrely coming off of turn 4, so let's see if he can keep the power down a little bit better here. Good run off the line, everybody nice and tight.
Speaking of nice and tight, remember Kenny Kibbe. He's picked up 6/10 in the past 15 laps plus. He is now in the back end of J.R. Shepard. They still have lots of traffic ahead of them, but Kibbe, he's been running 1/10 of a second quicker a lap and now has the run for the race lead. Shepard tries to play defense. Kibbe forced to bobble it all around.
Good move from Shepard there. A little bit of an aggressive late move, but not enough to make any major contact. That is going to hold up Kibbe ever so slightly. But Kenny Kibbe, clearly the faster car here. He's just got to find a way to position it to get himself by. Now, Kurt Smith, currently a lap down. He is next up on the list. Kurt is running in 15th. If I'm Kenny Kibbe, I am certainly watching that gap fall down, as that may be my advantage to get a really good move on the leader of J.R. Shepard.
Shepard has talked about in the past about some of the challenges Kenny Kibbe has provided to him in this series. Kenny Kibbe providing a big challenge to that end of him with 29 laps to go. Can he build up a run is the major question. Back to the bottom of the racetrack, Shepard really trying to match line to line what Kenny Kibbe was making work a little while ago.
Yeah, both drivers really getting down to that yellow line. You can see just how low Shepard is there. Little bit of a squirrely rear end for both cars there, but Kenny Kibbe just all over the back and continuing to push here very well.
Just can't get the run he's looking for yet. A bit more better of a run off of turn 2 that time. Still can't poke his way underneath. And you have to wonder how this is going to fare with Kibbe now to the inside line. Shepard trying to give a bit of the squeeze. Side by side, Kibbe looking to rip away the lead from Shepard. Still can't get himself fully clear as Shepard continues to play strong defense. Kibbe, though, leads to the stripe, 26 to go.
And it's all now just a battle of who's braver on the brakes. Kenny Kibbe pushing J.R. Shepard out a little bit slightly, and now Shepard's turn to push back. But Kibbe, now he has a car's width ahead and move him all the way up into first place. But J.R. Shepard, little love tap there in the back to let Kibbe know his displeasure of getting past. But Kenny Kibbe currently leading in that 14 car, but they are about to come up on a big train of lap traffic.
Quarter of the way to go in tonight's action right now. Of note, Mike Allen is off the circuit. 15 cars still running, 14 on various lap cycles, 13 on the lead lap at the moment. Kurt Smith, you mentioned, is the next of those drivers, followed by Joe Segala, the boss man, Lowell Jewell, as well as the train leading all the way back to 10th, Bruce Pearson, which could be a chance for some buffers. Keep in mind that the next battle is still heating up behind Mark Herzog, where he has still been able to hold off the 07. However, Mike Holloway has passed Austin Belke since then.
Couldn't tell if that was contact or a big slide there from Mark Herzog and Tim Shanoski, but Shanoski now onto the outside of turn 1, trying to make something move. Can he get the momentum in the crossover? Gives Herzog a little bit of a love tap there coming off of the corner, but that's going to allow for Mike Holloway to draw right up behind Austin Belke looking into. Holloway gets a good run through the mid-corner, but doesn't have enough to power it off coming across the stripe.
The first instance was getting loose. The second instance, contact. The third time, massive smacking. Crash on a turn 2. No caution yet, as now the leaders drive right on by. They all dodge all the traffic, and this changes a lot. Shepard has now lost several tenths of a second. Kibbe leads by 1.1 seconds. We stay green.
Oh my goodness gracious, Justin. That was absolutely insane. Mega kudos for the leaders there to be able to pick their way through the crowd. Kenny Kibbe there in the lead still. J.R. Shepard absolutely decimated behind. He's been able to put, I believe, Austin Belke in between the two. Or excuse me, not Austin Belke. That is Joe Segala in between the two.
They even put, I believe, Justin Morton among the drivers who have gained a ton of time as well as a result of that. Within now about 1 second of J.R. Shepard. What a crazy moment there. Surprised that was not a yellow, but that could have been big, to say the least. Justin Morton able to capitalize and now runs away from fourth rather. James Lowe and Jason Menda now bunched up from that.
Absolutely amazing little sequence there, Justin. Really, it's becoming difficult for all of us in the booth to just keep an eye on everything as everything is so jumbled courtesy of that accident now.
Jason Menda has just taken away fourth position from James Lowe. That's just taking place now. Jason Menda, as a result, one of the big benefactors of that because, well, he was about a few seconds behind James Lowe. The checkup provides the few seconds to gain right on back. James Lowe is in the pit lane. James Lowe has spun it into the grass. James Lowe is in the tow truck.
Oh my goodness, our early lead contender in James Lowe not able to get the job done, having another unlucky day for James. But as we follow Kenny Kibbe here working his way around as he's about to take to finish out in lap 86 when he crosses the stripe. He's currently working on the 11th place of Ruben Altis, the number 11 of Ruben Altis in 8th, trying to get something to happen there. That gap between him and J.R. Shepard back out to 1.4 seconds.
Continuing to grow. Kibbe a few hundreds quicker per lap in traffic even compared to some of the air cars. See right there, LT's having to let by Kurt Smith as well. J.R. Shepard, the next driver, up behind them. Justin Morton is still running 18.2s to 18 flats right now. Similar pace to J.R. Shepard in clean air at the moment. 12 to go this time.
12 to go, and Kenny Kibbe looking to be in absolute control of the field. Just uncharacteristic fallback from J.R. Shepard. It looks like he doesn't have anything left in the tank for Kibbe. Kibbe able to grow that gap up a tenth on that final lap. And Justin, we were talking about when he was following J.R. Shepard, how smooth Kibbe was compared to James Lowe. That car continuing to look relatively planted, even though these tires have seen 90 laps of wear.
been incredible to see what Kibby's been able to do. He's talked about it a little bit in the past. It's one of his favorite racetracks. Well, Shepherd, he has talked about this where it isn't one of his better tracks in some cases, even though he's been able to find his way to success at this track in the past in this series. 10 to go that time by the stripe. Still losing about half a tenth to a tenth a lap. Justin Morton within 1 second of your current points leader.
And you can see it there. There is nothing going on in between them, so it is now just a power up for Justin Morton to see if he can get up to him. Kurt Smith is up the road of J.R. Shepherd by about 2.5 seconds, so that may play a little bit into it, but Justin Morton on the charge here, not nearly content with the bronze. He wants the silver.
One of his best runs of the season so far in the past couple months as well in BRL competition. We've seen great speed from him in the past. It's just been about those tires, and he's gaining a tenth a lap. He might get to the 98. The question is, can he pass them?
Well, Justin, I think the question is, can he pass him? And what do J.R. Shepherd's tires look like? Is he able to hold it? We watch it here. You can see a little bit of that drift up the track from Morton. Morton's tires not looking in a great position. You can see just how much counter steer he's having to put in the car coming off of the corners, but he is still just slicing that gap down to J.R. Shepherd on that last lap. It is down to 0.75 seconds.
Still going to need to hope for a bit of help with some of this traffic coming up. Mark Herzog is up the road. Kurt Smith up the road. The boss man, Lowell Jewell, is up the road yet again with 5 laps to go. The battle for second now separated by about 7 to 8 tenths of a second still.
It is, but oh my goodness, you see just how much countering Justin Morton having to do coming through those corners. That car clearly not loving the way it feels right now. 5 laps to go for these guys at the line, though, so it is now or never time for Justin Morton.
Now 4 laps to go at the line that time by. Shepherd, though, might have enough of a cushion to hold on, while Kibby, he's done a phenomenal job in the second half of this race, especially. Saved the tires a ton in the first half, has blasted off like a rocket the second half of the race.
A little bit of a scary moment for Kibby there on that last lap at the 22 of Bruce Pearson. Looked like Pearson didn't exactly know Kibby was coming down on the inside, but now he'll come to the stripe to take the 2 to go signal from the flagman. Kenny Kibby in the 14, putting on an absolute masterclass of patience here today at Five Flags.
Start this race as far back as a second and a half from your race leaders. Eventually saved the tires and pushed ahead, closed up the gap, and now takes the white flag in what has been a green flag to checker flag race tonight for the BRL's Grand National Series. For Kenny Kibby, though, it was a successful campaign last season with a championship. He finds his way to victory lane for the first time in 2021. He wins at Five Flags.
Justin Morton got tantalizingly close to J.R. Shepherd there, but able to come across the line only a tenth of a second between the two. Absolutely insane to round out your podium.
And what a race, and what a drive. Only 5 cars on the lead lap. Austin Belke knew he lost a lap coming to the checker flag, but for Kibby, his first win of this season, a chance to burn it on down after 2 straight to start for J.R. Shepherd. It's still going to be very tight, though, at the end of the night as a result of the strong start for Shepherd at the top of the point standings, to say the very least.
It certainly is, but Kenny Kibby denying J.R. Shepherd of that hat trick, our reigning series champion, able to get his name into contention and clearly tell J.R. this ain't over yet.
Absolutely. Remember, Shepherd missed a race early on in last campaign and wasn't able to close up the 1 race gap in the points for a shot at the title. But it was an interesting race, to say the very least, here on Gsrc. Post-race coverage coming up in just a few moments. You're watching the Global SimRacing Channel for coverage of the BRL's Grand National Series from Five Flags Speedway. Welcome back to post-race coverage of the BRL's Grand National Series on the Global SimRacing Channel from the virtual Five Flag Speedway. For tonight, it went from green flag to checker flag. Kenny Kibbe takes the checker flag by almost 4 seconds over J.R. Shepherd, his first victory of the season. Shepherd comes home in second over Justin Morton by just 1/10 of a second plus, while Jason Menda finishes in fourth. Austin Belke rounds out your top 5 from 13th position, while Bruce Pearson, Lil Jewel, and Albanaltis round out the inversion spots. Chip Janowski finished in 9th, while Joe Segala rounded out your top 10 DJ.
In 11th was Chris Wolfson, followed by Mark Hertzog. Mike Holloway coming home in 12th, followed by Kurt Smith, who was 3 laps down in 14th. James Lowe, 15th, 17 laps down. Obviously suffering that damage, just not having a good day after a good early run. And Mike Allen and Todd Liston both failing to see the flag.
An interesting race overall tonight. Green flag, checker flag. But in the end, it's Kenny Kibbe who was able to save the most out of his tires to boost his way past Shepherd and then some in the final stage of the race. Kenny, first win of the season. How are you feeling?
Tired and sore, but really happy. Gosh, what a day. Yeah, we just I saw James and JR go up ahead at the beginning, and they looked like they were driving really hard. So I was like, I'm not gonna drive that hard at all. So I just tried to keep the guys like Justin and everybody else behind me and let them come to me. And sure enough, they did. You know, James did, and then to my surprise, JR did. And we just, I felt like we were at the advantage, so we just pressured him and got a good run on him, made the pass, and just kind of ran away with it.
Yeah, I was going to say, how difficult was it to save your tires to be that quick in the closing stages, up to a 10th to 2/10 a lap quicker than anyone else in the field?
Yeah, you know, this place, it's got an interesting rhythm to it, but you can really carry a lot of speed still while saving your stuff. You just got to make sure you hit the bottom, the very bottom in 1 and 2. 3 and 4, you can kind of change some things up, but the main thing there is to, and off of turn 2, is to ease onto the throttle and make sure you don't spin your tires. And we made sure of that. Tried my best to stay out of the wall, and the key thing is just keep the car from getting sideways. And I kind of just ran what I needed to run to stay in third for a while, and then just tried to replicate the same lap over and over again 100 times, and let everybody else slow down while we kind of stay the same.
Indeed. Next race, South Boston. Your thoughts going there?
Well, it's going to kind of come down to how much green flag racing we have. That's a hard place to pass there. Track position is going to be key, and the wrecks can be big there with walls on either side of you. So hopefully we can keep it clean and capitalize on mistakes and come through the field again.
Who do you want to thank for your victory tonight?
Well, first I want to give a shout out to the Western PA iRacing guys. Myself, J.R. Shepherd, Matt Chinaski, Tim Chinaski, and Brian Dean. We ran in the 3rd split of the Daytona 24-hour, the Friday race, and we just finished 3rd place in that. So we're really proud of that. Everybody else that also ran that race, Justin Morton and Austin Belke, Chris Wolfson, all them guys, Todd Liston as well. Just everybody at the Bootleg Racing League, again, for a really awesome race tonight. You guys at Global SimRacing Channel for the broadcast, as always. And everybody that hung out with me today. It's been quite the day. I'm ready for some rest.
Congratulations on the run in the Daytona 24. Congratulations on the victory tonight. Go get yourself some rest. Congrats. That's Kenny Kibbe. This strong run tonight. J.R. Shepherd gets the first opportunity for him this season to talk to DJ Clark.
Well, JR, not used to talking to you in this series, but you did a great job being able to hold off James in the early stages of that race. Looks like you got him to burn up his tires, but then Kenny just had the number for you, it seemed like, as the race went along.
Yeah, Kenny's one of the fastest drivers at Five Flags. He's ran a lot of races here, and he knows how to get around the place, and that's one of the disadvantages of starting up front. I knew that James was going to run hard, and I elected to run hard enough to stay in front of him, and it burned up my rear tires. But I really thought that we were, based on past history, going to get a caution. So that's why I ran as hard as I did. And I knew that once Kenny got by James, he had just been back there riding. So I knew it was just a matter of time before he made the pass.
Well, you mentioned cautions. It looked like an absolutely heart and mouth moment, that big schmozzle coming off of turn 2. Talk us through that moment. What was going through your head, how you managed to avoid that multi-car pile up in front of you.
Yeah, I'm extremely shocked that a caution didn't come out. I don't think it would have changed the results of the race, but it was a bad situation there for everybody. And I had to turn the car sideways to get to the bottom in order to miss it. So, yeah, just a weird situation. Hopefully we don't have any more of that moving forward.
I hope so, too. We were all screaming and hollering of just, freaking out for you guys in the car. I can't imagine being behind the wheel. But so in terms of the championship, obviously denied the hat trick here this week, but you still are going to have a lead in the standings. Do you think you'll be able to hold off a charge from Kenny as the season goes along?
It's a long way to go. So a lot can happen in each race, and you never know if you're going to get caught up in something. So he's fast at every track we go to. He's going to be one of the guys you got to race each and every week. And, we're in the right position. We'll try to do that.
Well, we look forward to watching it, JR. And anybody you would like to thank for your second place here tonight?
Just thanks to the Bootleg Racing League and Lowell Jewell for everything he does, and that allows us to do this each and every week, and Different Path Motorsports for being on board. And also a shout out to the Western PA iRacing group. We ran the 24 Hours of Daytona today and came on third. So it's been a long day. I'm ready to get some rest.
Well, get some sleep, JR. Great talking to you. Congratulations on second. And now Justin Prince has caught up with our charging third place finisher, Justin Morton.
Yes, indeed. You nearly actually got the J.R. Shepherd. How are you feeling about, first of all, your run tonight?
I feel pretty good about my run. I think I managed the run pretty good considering we went flag to flag. That track is rough. Just seeing JR burn up his stuff, it's been a really rough race to conserve your tires.
Second question, of course, is how did you conserve yours? Because we've seen a lot in the past few months, especially where you've burned up your stuff, whether it's the right rear of a lot of tracks or in last week's case, it looked like near the right front.
Yeah, just trying to stay even through his run, not pushing at the start. That's one thing I picked up from listening to JR. You want to aim for a lap time and not racing the guy in front of you, and just trying to be consistent.
Did that very well tonight. Overall, South Boston is next. Your thoughts there, where it was talked about by a race winner, Kenny Kibbe. He was expecting it to be difficult to pass.
Yes, that's definitely a hard track to pass at. If it's a track that I'm thinking of, it's definitely one of my favorite tracks to go to, actually. I'm looking forward to it.
Who do you want to thank for the run tonight?
I'd like to thank my team, Toll Down Force Racing, which we're currently running the Daytona 24. I'd like to thank my teammates for holding down the fort while I'm running here, Riley and Adam and Hayden. Great teammates. Yeah.
Director popping
Brandon.
up.
That is
Yes.
big enough. Thanks Pixel Dust for the amazing paint. Lowell for running this amazing league, and thank you guys for doing the broadcasting.
So you are jumping in the race car too then?
Yes, I am in the race car too. I will be jumping in the car at 1 in the morning my time.
Good luck in the middle of the night, and congrats on the run.
Thank you.
Justin Morton coming home third, about to jump into another race car in just a couple hours' time. DJ, your thoughts on this one?
Well, first off, I just got to give massive credit to the guys who are running Daytona this weekend. To go from that to jump back into running a little short track like this, that's a lot of talent and a lot of skill to do. But no, I think, Justin, this may be the start of something very interesting. Kenny Kibbe, really the first one to show that J.R. Shepherd is human this season. You heard JR say Kibbe is going to be hard to beat week in and week out. I think we may see the defending champion making a little bit of a play as this season goes along.
2 points the separation after 3 races. For those keeping track, Shepherd with that advantage over Kenny Kibbe. Morton third. The top 3 favorites now for the championship as a result of tonight's action. But with that, I'd like to thank you once again for tuning in for tonight's exciting action here from Five Flags. I'd also like to thank the Bootleg Racing League for organizing this exciting series and the companies that provide the software and hardware for our broadcast listed here on screen. Special thanks go to June Law to provide your wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. Thanks as well to the team tonight in DJ and Sean. If you'd like to find out more about Gsrc including upcoming races, find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. If you'd like to support the channel, you can check out our merchandise for sale at gsrc.storevyy.com. Or you can check out our social media on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global SimRacing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. Don't forget to head over to YouTube page and hit that big red subscribe button, as well as the notification bell, so you don't miss a moment on the Global SimRacing Channel. As talked about with our drivers, the next race is at South Boston Speedway. Coverage starts at approximately 8:45 p.m. Eastern Time. Green flag scheduled for approximately 9 p.m. Be sure to tune in on the Global SimRacing Channel. And also don't forget, just about less than 20 minutes from now, it is action going to Sonoma. Self-sound racing action, be sure to tune in here on Gsrc. We also have upcoming races for other series listed on screen, so check those out as well and mark them down in your calendar. Until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.